They called her Unsinkable, the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the largest battleship ever built, carrying the weight of a nation's desperation on her steel shoulders. But in the spring of 1945, when Japan's empire was collapsing, Yamato was given one last order, not to win, but to die. It wasn't just a mission. It was a suicide voyage. The year was 1945. The Pacific War had turned against Japan. American bombers darkened the skies, their submarines cut supply lines, and their carriers controlled the oceans. Japan's dream of domination was shattered. And in the middle of this despair, stood Yamato, a giant warship, armed with guns so powerful they could hurl shells the size of small cars more than 20 miles. She was supposed to be invincible. But now, even Yamato had no future. The Imperial High Command, desperate for a symbol of sacrifice, conceived a mission they called Operation 10 Go. Yamato and the small escort fleet would sail to Okinawa, where American forces were already landing in overwhelming strength. There was no fuel for her to return, no plan for survival. Her orders were simple: beach herself on Okinawa, fight until destroyed, and die as a fortress of steel. It was not strategy, it was spectacle. A final gesture of defiance, meant to show Japan's will to resist, even in certain death. The crew knew, every man on board, nearly 3,000 souls, understood that this voyage was one way. Some wrote farewell letters to families. Some prayed. Others drank and laughed, as if mocking fate. But deep down, they all carried the same heavy truth. They were sailing to their graves. On April 6, 1945, Yamato departed Tokuyama with her escorts. As she left harbor, civilians lined the shore in silence. Some waved flags. Some wept. Many knew they were watching the last giant of Japan's navy sail for the last time. The battleship's massive silhouette cut across the horizon, but behind her grandeur lay only tragedy. American intelligence already knew. Codebreakers had intercepted Japanese communications. The U.S. Navy was prepared, with an armada of carriers, cruisers, and destroyers waiting like hunters around a doomed beast. Yamato's last voyage had begun, but her fate was already sealed. The sea was calm, the sun glaring, when the first American submarines spotted her. Shadows under the waves, silently stalking. But Yamato pressed on. The crew went about their duties, polishing brass, adjusting guns, running drills, perhaps clinging to routine as a shield against the fear of what was coming. In the kitchens, cooks prepared what could be a last meal. In the engine rooms, sweat poured as men kept the massive turbines roaring. Above deck, officers gazed out at the endless ocean, each lost in thoughts they would never voice. That night, the men slept knowing tomorrow could bring fire from the sky. And for many, sleep was restless, haunted by the sound of bombs they had yet to face. Morning came, April 7, 1945, the day of Yamato's death. At 10 a.m., radar picked up approaching aircraft. Hundreds of American planes, fighters, bombers, torpedo squadrons, launched from carriers offshore. The sky began to hum with engines, growing louder, heavier, until the horizon itself seemed to buzz with death. The order rang out across Yamato's decks: prepare for air attack. Crewmen scrambled to anti-aircraft guns. Ammunition belts clattered. The great ship bristled with weapons, every barrel pointed skyward, ready to claw at the incoming storm. The men shouted prayers, orders, and curses. Their hearts pounded. And then, black specks appeared in the sky. Growing larger, closer, the storm had come. The first wave dove out of the sun. Bombs whistled, torpedoes sliced through waves, and machine guns sprayed death. Yamato shook under the impacts, water geysers towering beside her hull. Anti-aircraft fire thundered, a forest of black smoke puffs erupting around the attackers. Planes fell flaming, crashing into the sea. But still, they kept coming. Bombs slammed into Yamato's decks. Torpedoes smashed into her side, sending shudders through her steel ribs. Fires roared to life, spreading across corridors. Men screamed in the smoke. Officers shouted to hold steady, to keep fighting. The great ship groaned but still fought back, her giant guns thundering at enemies too fast, too small, too many. And the waves kept coming. Wave after wave of American aircraft struck Yamato. The sea around her boiled with explosions. Her decks ran red with fire and blood. Her anti-aircraft crews fought with insane courage, firing until guns jammed, until barrels melted, until they themselves were cut down by shrapnel and bullets. And still, they fought. But Yamato was bleeding. 6, 7, 8 torpedoes tore into her hull. The once proud giant began to list heavily to port. Pumps roared as engineers tried desperately to counter flood compartments, but the damage was catastrophic. Her engines stuttered. Her guns slowed. The monster of steel was being dragged down, piece by piece, by a relentless storm of iron and fire. The captain, Admiral Ito, stood on the bridge, his face carved from stone. He had known this outcome from the start, yet he remained calm, giving orders with a voice steady as steel. Around him, officers saluted and carried on, though all knew the end was near. By noon, Yamato was dying. Fires raged uncontrolled. Smoke choked the sky. Her list had grown unbearable. Men fell from the tilting decks into the sea, where oil and flames awaited them. Survivors clung to debris, screaming for comrades, watching helplessly as their ship, their world, was torn apart. Then came the final blow. Shortly after 2 p.m., a series of torpedo hits sealed her fate. Yamato began to roll, slowly at first, then faster. Her massive turrets broke free and tumbled into the sea. Men clung to rails, praying, crying, or simply staring into nothing. The ocean swallowed her deck. Her bow rose into the air, pointing skyward like a monument to futility. And then, an earth-shattering explosion. Her forward magazine detonated. A fireball tore through the sky, mushrooming thousands of feet into the air. The shockwave rippled across the ocean, stunning even the attacking pilots. Where once stood the greatest battleship in history, there was now only smoke, fire, and wreckage. Yamato was gone. Out of nearly 3,000 men, only a few hundred survived, plucked from burning seas by escort ships or left drifting in oil-slicked waters. The rest went down with their ship, entombed forever beneath the waves of the East China Sea. For Japan, Yamato's death was more than the loss of steel, it was the death of a dream. The battleship had been a symbol of national pride, of naval supremacy, of invincibility. Now she lay shattered, another casualty of a war already lost. Her sacrifice achieved nothing. Okinawa still fell, Japan still surrendered, and Yamato became not a savior, but a tombstone for an empire's ambition. Yet even in defeat, her story lived on. For the men who served on her, who died on her, Yamato was not just a ship. She was a final stage where courage met despair, where honor clashed with futility, where steel giants proved powerless against the storm of modern war. Today, the wreck of Yamato rests silently beneath the sea, her guns stilled, her decks broken. Divers and historians speak of her with awe and sadness. She remains a reminder of the cost of pride, of the futility of sacrifice without purpose, and of the thousands who vanished in fire and water on that April day. The last voyage of Yamato was not a victory, nor even a battle in the true sense. It was a funeral procession, a steel colossus, sent to die in a desperate gesture, buried in the endless sea. And sir, when we remember Yamato, we do not remember triumph. We remember tragedy, the tragedy of men ordered to die, of a ship too mighty to save a nation, and of a world learning, painfully, that even the greatest giants can fall. Because in the end, the sea takes everything, pride, power, dreams. And it keeps them, silent and eternal. If you found this story powerful and want to explore more forgotten histories and emotional tales like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these voices alive. Because in the end, the sea takes everything, pride, power, dreams. And it keeps them, silent and eternal. If you found this story powerful and want to explore more forgotten histories and emotional tales like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. For more fascinating and untold history stories, stay with us. Your support keeps these voices alive.